Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live from the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all of the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to, what are we calling this? Friday's Eve, or Eve of, Friday Eve. What are we calling this now? Turbo Thursday?
Turbo Thursday.
That's right. I forgot. That's Big Rig on the board, by the way. Hey, how you doing, man?
Good. How you doing?
Good. I was sitting here right as I was going to say it, it dawned on me, wait a minute, we had a new name.
Yep, Turbo Thursday.
Turbo Thursday. Okay. I'm not sure why it's turbo, but we like it better that way, so it's good. Anyway, we got a great show laid on for you today. So two particular guests. So one at 3 o'clock today, you've heard him before. He's running for Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. Brian Taylor is going to be in studio with us at 3 o'clock. We'll have a discussion about a number of things that are happening, not the least of which is the IVF situation in Alabama. So yeah, Brian Taylor, 3 o'clock today. And then at 4 o'clock today, assuming that all goes well in Montgomery for him to pull away from committees where he's been speaking, that's Eric Johnston, who is a longtime legal scholar and advocate for conservative policy issues like pro-life and anti-gambling and that kind of thing. Eric Johnson is going to be here to update us on things that are happening in Montgomery so we can keep abreast of the facts. All right, all that to say, I've got stuff happening in studio, out of studio, and still got a triple dipper on top of it. So hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. First out the gate, I'm going to pick up where I left off yesterday. Illegal votes. Illegal votes. Is it possible for these waves and waves of humanity coming across the southern border to then become voters? Well, there's a story behind that, and it's a bit of a yes and a no, and a bit of a no, and then maybe a yes. So we'll talk about it. Number 1, Triple Dipper. I'll fill you in on what I know. Illegal votes. That's number 1. Number 2, I'm calling it legal fine lines. Y'all, there's some things that are happening out there. Did you know, by the way, that a judge in Illinois, extremely liberal judge, decided, I'm just going to go ahead and take Trump off the ballot up here in Illinois last night. But then there's other things that are happening too, and they're all wrapped up in, jurisprudence. What is happening on the bench in some places? Where are the decisions going? And what do we have to do about it? And can you be legislated back in a different direction? And anyway, all that to say, legal fine lines. We're going to walk the legal fine lines as number 2 on the Triple Dipper in conjunction with our conversation with Brian Taylor. And then number 4, in conjunction with our conversation with Eric Johnston, knee jerks and dice rollers is what I'm calling it. They got legislation flying down there. How can we fix the IVF? Oh, what's going to happen with gambling? Do we have a meeting today or don't we? Will we allow the opposition to even speak to the bill? I mean, it's right now, I'll be honest with you, I am not impressed with the legislative and I've seen some wacky days in the legislature, but this week may take the cake. So knee jerks and dice rollers, y'all stay tuned for that one. Number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, listen, let me jump over here to my opening monologue. So the Rightside Way monologue, sponsored for you daily by Southern Immediate Care. Southern Immediate Care, a chain of clinics that covers a huge swath of ground around our overly broad listening area. Southern Immediate Care is literally open 7 days a week in all their locations, places like Gadsden, Anniston, Atala, 6 more locations in and around the Birmingham area. You check them out. You need something, they are there for you. And they are owned by a Rightside ruffian himself. Southern Immediate Care, sponsor of the Rightside Way monologue. All right. Listen. Oh, man. This one, I tell you what. Look out, folks, because you may not know it, but you are the actual problem. The problem for what, you might ask? Everything. Everything that's wrong is because of you. Don't you see it? Can't you feel it? Aren't you the least bit self-aware? You're out there causing all this ruckus and social upheaval. You're out there causing all that burning, looting, and mayhem. You're the reason for the high crimes and misdemeanors. You even question the election and like everything. It's you. It's really you all this time. On second thought, no, not at all. No. But still, that's what they want the world to believe. The left desperately wants to invoke their policies and agendas which never actually work, and when they fail, they do all they can to shift the blame to those on the right as if we somehow own it. Classic Marxism. Classic blame-shifting, finger-pointing, agenda-driven Marxism. Y'all, there's an old axiom in the practice of law that when the law is in your favor, you argue the law. And when the facts are in your favor, you argue the facts. And when nothing's in your favor, you just bang on the podium and shout and do the best you can. Well, the left is doing a whole lot of podium banging and shouting right now. And they are blaming their demise as a movement on you. And their favorite target right now is anybody who loves God and country. God and country. Doesn't sound too evil, does it? Sounds like everything we should stand for. Who would want to be anything less than somebody who stands up for faith and patriotism? You know, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Captain America, apple pie, baseball, church bells ringing, and democracy. Nope. Not if the left has anything to say about it. They've even launched a campaign to brand you with a brand new title. If you believe in the value and sanctity of God and country, then you are one sorry individual. You are the worst among us. You're an extremist. You are, wait for it, a Christian nationalist. Yep. That most nasty combination of people who dare to mix their faith and politics, people who actually dare to believe that God and country go together. And the most recent attack on any of you who fit that category is found in an interview with one of Politico's senior reporters. Investigative journalist Heidi Prisbliss is a national correspondent for Politico. She recently went on MSNBC. I know it's MSNBC, but she went on MSNBC and she opined that those who believe in God and country are a risk and should not be considered in anything that involves public policy. At one point, she stated with a straight face that the media needs to pay close attention to these extremists, saying that Trump is, quote, surrounded by this more extremist element. They're going to hear words like Christian nationalism, like the New Apostolic Reformation, and these are the groups you should get very, very schooled on because they have a lot of power in Trump's circle. Yeah, well, it didn't stop there. Listen to the rest of this. She went on to say, quote, the thing that unites them is Christian nationalists, not Christians, by the way, because Christian nationalists is very different, is that they believe that our rights as Americans, as all human beings, they don't come from any earthly authority. They don't come from Congress. They don't come from the Supreme Court. They come from God. The problem with that is, she said, is that they are determining, it's men determining this, what God is telling them. And then she went on to say, and in the past, that so-called natural law is, it's a pillar of Catholicism, for instance. It's been used for good and social justice campaigns. Martin Luther King evoked it in talking about civil rights, but now you have an extremist element of conservative Christians who say that this applies specifically to issues regarding things like abortion and gay marriage, and it's going much further than that. God almighty. The host of the show just eagerly glommed onto her commentary, riveted by her deep understanding of the social upheavals that could be coming if Christian nationalists who value the ideals and precepts of our faith are ever allowed to vote for Trump. It was such a tripe. But keep in mind, she's a vaunted and much-loved left-wing investigative reporter. Yeah, the left is telling us right now what they're going to do. They are setting up their straw man argument. They are putting up their favorite target. They are aligning their grievances with one brand so they can focus their energy. If you are a God-fearing patriot who sees no issue with faith being invoked in the public square, then you will be the demise of this nation, and they want to make sure that everyone knows it. Abortion? Christian nationalists. Close the border? Christian nationalists. Control our spending? Christian nationalists. Put criminals in jail? Ban transgenders in sports? Protect children from traffickers? Christian nationalists. The plan for left-wing dominance gets easier when they refine their messaging and isolate their target. If you go back and you look at Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, if you haven't ever seen it, you should. Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, in those rules you will find that among those actual rules that he wrote down for how best to bring a left-wing agenda forward is what Alinsky himself called rule number 4. Quote, ridicule is man's best, most potent weapon. There is no defense. It is almost impossible to counterattack ridicule. Also, it infuriates the opposition who then react to your advantage. His words, not mine, by the way. And then there's Alinsky's rule number 11. Quote, if you push a negative hard and deep enough, it will break through to its counter side. Great. And then he followed with rule number 13. Quote, pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. Yep, that's what we're seeing. Our Politico reporter was just the tip of the iceberg. You type in the term Christian nationalism into any online search engine and the results come in page after page after page This is their target right now. They hate the idea, the left does. They hate the idea that people who love the Lord and love their country may actually want a say in what happens in life. So yes, you are now the problem. The left needs a whipping boy, and Christian nationalism is it. So somewhere, somehow, some way, they have determined that if they can brand the demise of their liberal agendas on one group, that it will give them the edge they need in their quest for more failed public policy. But y'all, we know just the opposite. I mean, this nation was not founded in godless fashion. Tony Perkins from the Family Research Council recently said in response to that interview I told you about, he said, quote, "Our own republic was founded on the belief that our rights come from God, not earthly kings or government." He's right. Go read the founding documents. Study your history. While you're at it, study your Bible. What teachings of Jesus would you not want to see in the halls of government? I mean, like, do you want to do away with accountability or love or compassion or courage or truth or defense of the defenseless or honor of others? What aspect of America's history do you want to erase? Good, bad, and ugly, we are the greatest nation on the face of the earth and made so by the grace of God, and I have no problem saying that I believe that Jesus is Lord and America's great. God and country. So I guess I'm a Christian nationalist. And so are many of you. And I'm glad. And by the way, we are not the problem. We are the solution. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Yeah, you bunch of scary Christian nationalists. How dare you think that you can pray and talk about faith and politics all at the same time? How dare you impose your will upon us? Nah, not really. We're just actively seeking the idea of faith in God and love for country all at the same time. Yep, we are the solution. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Like, wow, just saving the world one soundbite at a time. Text lines are open. Quite a few of you already figured that out. Text lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text it or call it. I got several. Let's see what we got here. Alex from Elkmont. Oh, yeah. He says we ought to call it Thunderfoot Thursday. That's not a bad idea. So Big Rig hadn't heard that story. You probably don't know. So the phone number, by the way, there are times when I realize Big Rig's been here for a few weeks now, and I still realize there's other things I haven't told him yet. So one of them is our phone number, 833-68-RIGHT. Mm-hmm. The 68 comes from my 68 Mustang that was my first car that I had driving through high school and college.
Okay.
All right. Which, by the way, my 68 Mustang's name was Thunderfoot, which was probably more of an indication of how I drove than anything. But so Alex from Elkmont says we ought to call it Thunderfoot Thursday. Now that you put it all together, I have now enlightened you.
I like that. That's good. Thunderfoot Thursday.
Alex, thanks for remembering that, man. I appreciate that. And now I've given me an opportunity to segue right in there and talk about my car and fill in Big Rig. John from Elkmont said Thursday ought to be over the hump day. That's not bad, too. We're over the hump day. Russell from Rural Route 1. I always have trouble saying that. Russell from Rural Route 1. Anyway, amen, Brother Phil, he says. Thank you, brother. Terry from Huntsville says, Phil, I've been to China 5 times, never saw a publicly displayed Christian cross. Every rooftop has zodiac signs, but no crosses, stars, or crescents. Yes, communists plan to eradicate religion in the U.S. Okay, Terry, thank you. Scott from Athens. Dear Uncle Phil, Dear Uncle Phil, I'll take the Christian persecution with a smile. It was the COVID persecution for wanting free air and clean bodily temple that had me mad beyond measures. God bless. Scott, there you go, man. All right. John from Huntsville says, Phil, fantastic monologue and happy leap day. That's right, it is. Today's leap year. Do you know that? This is February 29th. Once every, 4 years? We get an extra day in the month of February.
Okay.
I saw one time, too, and I've never actually calculated this out. Like, you know how every 30 days, half September, April, May, and November, and then there's, always February and 31 days and a few others. That if every month just had 30 days, it would even out perfectly. But instead we have 28, 30, 31, and then every 4 years we got to do an extra day to make up the difference. That's crazy.
It's weird.
Okay, anyway, leap year, happy leap year. He says, Phil, fantastic monologue, happy leap day. I just want to say the reason why I gave you and Big Rig a much lower score than usual yesterday is because you broke one of my golden rules, which is never make fun of a man that has fried fish.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
Okay. All right. Richard from Madison says, amen, Brother Phil. God bless the USA. There you go. And then Alex from Elkmont again says, thanks, guys, and I'd love a shirt. Alex, appreciate you, man. Listen, by the way, we have a new batch of shirts coming in, so as soon as they're in, we need to start giving away some shirts again.
That's a good idea for a shirt, the Thunderfoot thing.
But maybe we should. Thunderfoot Thursday.
What color was your Mustang?
It was the color was called ice blue, and it originally had a black vinyl top.
Nice.
Yeah, 289, board 30 over, Edelbrock Torker aluminum intake, Holly 600 carburetor, crane cam, hooker headers. Oh man, the thing ran like a dream.
Nice.
Just that's why it was named Thunderfoot. So there you have it. All right, listen, we got a major show lined up for you. Coming up next, right after the break, we're going to jump right into the first dipper, illegal votes. Can illegals vote? Well, you may be surprised. Are they trying to get illegals to vote? Darn right they are. Are they successful anywhere? Well, we got a recent court ruling you might want to know about. It's like it kind of boggles the mind. Like, what is it with the left and just attempting to basically destroy who we are and go right to the fabric of our country? One of our constitutional rights is the right to vote, and yet they want to hand that away as if it's nothing. I mean, right now they're giving away everything else, right? You can get a free phone. You can get free, debit cards full of money. You can get free housing. You can get free food. You can get free clothing. You can get free medical care. Heck, why not give you a free vote while you're at it? There was just the other day, Fox News did a walk around, sort of man on the street thing. Bunch of illegals. Hey, if you could vote, who would you vote for? Oh, Biden. If you could vote, who would you vote for? Biden. If you could vote, who would you vote for? Biden. He does many good things for us. Biden. No, what he's doing is he's giving you stuff for free. And it's wearing out the system. City of Denver, by the way, just announced this morning they're having to close down some homeless shelters because they can no longer sustain the flood they've been getting. City of New York City is rethinking its sanctuary status. City of Athens, Georgia, in the wake of the murder of that young lady, the student down there at the nursing school in Athens, the mayor is getting backlash. And I don't mean like a little bit. I mean like shouting him down at his speech. The guy is a liberal punk who thought it'd be cool to just kneel with Black Lives Matter and become a sanctuary city, and now a young lady's dead. Well, people are sick of it. In the middle of it all, how about you not give them our right to vote, too? Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative and just plain right. Like covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation. This one right here, Alabama. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. It goes like way down south of Birmingham and up north of Huntsville and Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and even Mississippi all thrown in, just for good measure. Hey, by the way, I just got a text from Mel from Tuscaloosa. Mel says, with regards to the monologue a minute ago about Christian nationalism, he says, amen, and honor to be a warrior for the one who won the war. It's all about Jesus. God bless you, bro. Thank you, Mel. Appreciate you, man. All right, first dipper, illegal votes. Don't tell me for a second they're not thinking it. The left wants you to not pay attention. They want you to go, don't, nothing to see here. We're not trying to build new voter base. No, we only imported 11 million people for just, because we just thought it'd be nice for them to be here. We just opened up the floodgates and let them all come in for what? So we could give stuff to them? So that we could strain the systems? So that we could drive people crazy? So that we could have crimes committed that would then bring harm to our U.S. citizens? Well, that's all happening. But no, surely that wasn't why they did it. They did it because it's about a control issue. It's about political power, in my opinion. This is about an agenda. It's about a one world government agenda, in my opinion. It's about literally saying open borders are fine. And then on top of it, once they're here, we'll turn them into voters. And I've said before, too, it took me a little bit to get here. I'm not overly cynical. A lot of times I'll find the glass half full. And that's my nature. And I believe that the power of optimism is necessary. Optimism not in a gullible sense, but optimism in the idea that the Lord gives me a brighter outlook. And I'm thankful because there's dark days and there's times when I need that optimism to carry me through. I need basically the assurances of where I stand in the Lord to move through. That being said, I have determined, and I believe it's wisdom, that what we're seeing on our southern border is absolutely intentional. When it first started, and I said this yesterday, when Biden began on day one, like he was sworn in and he went straight to the Oval Office and started signing executive orders. And if you remember, within the first day, he was doing away with Trump's border policies. Things like remain in Mexico and allowing catch and release to be continued and just on and on and on. Like, what are you doing? None of that was harming the United States. In fact, it was making the United States more secure. I would dare say right now, Trump will be having more of an uphill climb in the campaign trail if Biden had just continued Trump's policies on the border. But nope, he couldn't do it. And right now, like I'm looking up on the screens, it's one of the topics that's been going on the screens the entire time I've been on the air. Both Biden and Trump are down at the southern border today. Today. If you look at where they went, it tells you everything. Trump is actually with the governor right now. The former president is with the governor, touring Eagle Pass, Texas. Eagle Pass, one of the epicenters of mass migration. Whereas, you got Biden, who is in El Paso, where they don't have near the issue with mass migration that we have in Eagle Pass. He chose the safer route. The streets will be a little cleaner there. I feel certain that there will be a photo op where he'll stand there next to a border wall and look like things are secure. He'll smile and probably ask for some, explanation about where he's supposed to stand. And we can only hope that he'll find his way to the podium on time. But he did not even go to the southern border, but twice, including today. Twice in 3 years. And yet, I got a piece right here from CNN. This matters. This matters to the electorate. This is not just an issue that those of us that listen to conservative radio care about. We are now hearing through the polling, real polling, good polling, that this is the number one issue that people care about. So piece here from CNN, rather thick piece, by the way. I'm not sure I'm going to get through all of it. It says, one key reason for Donald Trump's dominance in the GOP presidential race may be hiding in plain sight. It's not hiding. Compared to 2016, the Republican electorate has moved sharply to the right on immigration. That is crazy. We were already to the right on immigration. We're mad. He said that shift on one of Trump's signature issues has tightened his grip on the party. This is such a crappy article. CNN. Anyway, it says both Biden and Trump are planning to visit the border on Thursday. This came out yesterday. An early indication of how large a role immigration will play in a likely general election rematch between them. It says a majority of GOP voters this year have polled saying that the undocumented immigrants should be deported. In New Hampshire, the results flipped from 2016. Back then, 56% of GOP primary voters said undocumented migrants should be offered legal status. In last month's primary, 55% said they should be deported. In South Carolina, the share of GOP primary voters who said that undocumented immigrants should be deported soared from 44% to 66%. What we're looking at right here is this clear evidence, y'all, that it matters. CNN's trying to find a way to explain it away. It's just very important now. It's different than it was back then. No, it wasn't. Remember, build the wall? We're going to build a beautiful wall. Well, I got news. People cared about it then, but now we're watching almost daily as people are dying. Bodies are floating in the Rio Grande. I'm not being, insensitive. It's not hyperbole. It's real. Every single day, there are bodies on the southern border. Every single day. Eagle Pass, Texas, had to actually get refrigerator trucks because they don't have the mortuary space to handle all the bodies. The sheriff in one of the locations down there said they find bodies in the Rio Grande on a daily basis. Ranchers who live along the border say that they're constantly finding things in the bushes. Sometimes they're finding bodies. Meanwhile, you have to look at it and go, are these people flood? Are they coming here and getting all this free stuff and they're going to be allowed to vote? Well, so piece on AP News came out last month because they don't want you to believe this. They don't want you to believe it. It says Donald Trump is seizing on his party's frustration with the recent surge of illegal crossings at the U.S. southern border to churn up fears around another GOP concern, voter fraud. The former Republican president has repeatedly suggested that Democrats are encouraging migrants to flow into the country illegally in order to register them to vote in the 2024 election. Says the unsupported claim, which Trump and other Republicans have carted out in past election years, is resonating with voters who agree that security is lacking at both the border and the polls. Experts say it can also be damaging, giving undue traction to false stereotypes and extremist ideologies, such as the racist Great Replacement theory. Remember I talked about that the other day? I am now fully on board with the idea that we do have replacement theory in place. Replacement theory. It's not, by the way, it's not white people are scared, they're getting replaced. That's not it at all. It's Americans. You're trying to replace Americans. All right, that being said, AP is poo-pooing this. They're poo-pooing it. It ain't real. Oh, this is just Trump trying to stir up his base. How about this? Politico. Last week. Do you remember in 2022, New York City decided to pass a local ordinance to allow non-citizens to vote in their elections? Keep in mind how big that is. New York City drives the train on politics in the state of New York. Yes, Buffalo and Syracuse and the others, they definitely have some measure of base. New York City is still the driving force. It is one of the largest cities in the world, and it is filled up right now with illegals. And in 2022, before the massive surge began to reach New York, the city council thought it'd be awesome. Let's pass an ordinance and we'll let them vote here. A state appeals court, it says yesterday in the Politico article, ruled that a New York City law that would allow non-citizens to vote in local elections is unconstitutional. There you go. Marking a win for the Republican elected officials who sued to block it. Said, quote, "We determined this local law was enacted in violation of the New York State Constitution and municipal home rule law and thus must be declared null and void." Outstanding. The 2022 law had not yet gone into effect since it faced immediate legal challenges. It sought to let green card holders and other people living in New York City with federal work authorizations to vote in local elections for offices including mayor and city council, applying to some 800,000 new eligible voters in a city of 8.5 million. 8.5 million. New York City is literally pushing twice the size of the entire state of Alabama in population. That's huge. And they were going to allow illegals to vote there. No, Phil, it says green card holders and things. Yeah, wait. Just wait. Just don't even think. If they're going to allow non-citizens to vote and they're going to have that many illegals there, guess what's going to wind up happening next? You're going to go from green card voters to just, do you live here? Have you got a power bill or something to show where you reside? Thank you, Mr. Juan Pablo, whatever your name is. Thank you very much for coming here. Thank you, Mr. Nigerian immigrant. Thank you, Chinese citizen who now lives illegally in New York. Thank you. You're allowed to vote. Well, this is a 3-1 ruling, meaning that one of the justices didn't agree, but nonetheless, the appellate court ruled that the clause in the state constitution that every citizen shall be entitled to vote refers exclusively to U.S. citizens. And the court ruled that a provision of state municipal home rule law requires changes to elections be passed by a voter referendum, not a local legislative body like a council. So yeah, it goes on to say in this article, though, it says non-citizen voting is still extremely rare. Oh, wait a minute. You mean it's not like never? No. It's out there. Washington, D.C., it says, overcame opposition from congressional Republicans to allow non-citizens to vote. Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, was going to allow, and by the way, don't forget, Washington, D.C., it has some representation. It has national implications. And it, oh, by the way, is the seat of government. Can you imagine what would happen if they were allowing illegals to vote there? Washington, D.C. overcame opposition from congressional Republicans to allow non-citizens to vote, but the city's law has now been challenged in court, you think? A San Francisco court, well, of course, upheld a law in 2023 allowing certain non-citizens to vote in school board elections. 3 Vermont cities, including Burlington, recently allowed legal residents to vote in local elections. So I guess what I'm saying is this. Is there a mass registration of illegals right now to allow them to vote in our coming election? No, not yet. Is there a move, though, for 2 things? Think about it, 2 things. Is there a move right now to allow non-citizens to vote? And the answer to that is yes. And is there a move right now by Democrats to bring amnesty to illegal citizens? And the answer to that is yes. And once they have amnesty, then they have the status to be registered to vote no matter what. Can't do it. Listen, I got a little more on this. We'll take a break right now. When we come back from this break, I'm going to go a little further with this. Like, what would happen to those D.C. elections? And then what is the history of what they are calling now non-citizen suffrage? Non-citizen suffrage? There's a movement? Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. All right, hey, listen, a couple things here on this topic as we wrap it up before the top of the hour. Don't forget Brian Taylor, who is running for Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. Is going to be in studio with us here momentarily. Yeah, the question of illegal voting. Don't think they're not trying. And by the way, don't fall asleep on this one and think that, well, the laws are already taking care of that. So here's a piece right now. I pulled this off of an organization that tracks illegal voting, illegal aliens. It says last fall the D.C. City Council. This, by the way, that came out in February of this year. And last fall, the D.C. City Council passed a bill that will allow non-citizens, including illegal immigrants, to vote in their local elections. If it survives review by Congress, the new law's impact on elections will not be negligible. According to the 2021 American Community Survey, a little over 42,000 voting-age non-citizens live in that district, and roughly half of those non-citizens are likely to be illegal. For context, it says D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser won her party's nomination last year by fewer than 11,000 votes. All right, what I'm saying is they could flip an election. They could be the swing. They could be the swing block that takes an election a different direction in the D.C. area. It says even if non-citizen voting does not swing any elections in D.C., the symbolism would be significant, as the nation's capital embraces a mindset that residents need not be fully committed to the country before they begin casting votes that affect its future. The D.C. law goes further to grant voting rights to people whose very presence in the U.S. is illegal. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Next week, and by the way, this is 3 weeks ago, it says next week the House Rules Committee will consider a bill sponsored by Representative James Comer that would repeal D.C.'s election law. So for those of you who don't know, D.C. operates with basically a super city council kind of effect. The mayor it's almost like small state governance in essence, but they are subject to congressional oversight. So the House Rules Committee is considering a bill sponsored by Representative James Comer that repeals D.C.'s election law. A companion resolution has been sponsored by Senator Tom Cotton. So that's positive. The question is, can we get it through the Senate? I think we can get it through the House. I just got an epic text from Rightside ruffian himself, former Congressman Mo Brooks. Appreciate you, Mo. Thanks for listening. Appreciate your service too, by the way, brother. He says several things. He says 2 decades ago, a federal GAO study determined that as much as 3% of the U.S. registered voters are not citizens. Interesting. He says the Commission on Federal Election Reform determined voting by non-citizens was one of the top 3 threats to the validity of our U.S. elections. Wow. National Voter Registration Act of 1993 makes it illegal to ask for non-citizens proof of citizenship when they register to vote. God almighty. Why? Why would that be a thing? The U.S. 10th Court of Appeals did hold the National Voting Rights Act negated a Kansas statute that would have required proof of citizenship. All right. In a House floor speech in 2020, he says, this is Mo Brooks, he says, I detailed the math and the data that suggested that as many as 1.7 million non-citizens voted in our 2020 elections. Listen, I'm just going to tell you. And then he apologizes for the typos. On a text like that, Mo, come on. And he also points out, he says that Biden has specifically sort of driven the train on this by promising amnesty, which would mean allowing illegals to vote. So is there a non-citizen suffrage movement? Suffrage. I've always thought that word was kind of interesting for, pressing for the right to vote. Women's suffrage, the right of non-citizens to vote. And this is Wikipedia, and I take that with a big fat grain of salt. But it usually gives me a base to work from. In this case, I could not find fault with it. It says the right of non-citizens to vote has historically been a contentious issue. You think? Since 1997, the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act has prohibited non-citizens from voting in federal elections. But it points out that while no state is allowing non-citizens to vote in their statewide elections, since Arkansas became the last one to outlaw it in 1926, that there are still at least 13 local jurisdictions that are attempting to do so, not the least of which is New York City, which we just talked about. There's 2 of them in Vermont, 11 in Maryland, and then you've got the efforts by Washington, D.C., you've got the efforts by New York City, you've got the efforts by San Francisco. It does point out that Alabama We approved a referendum in 2020 to embed it in our state constitution that U.S. citizenship is required to vote anywhere in Alabama. Listen, are they voting? I can't tell you they're not right now. I can tell you the law prevents it, but I can also tell you, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, that liberals are doing everything they can to get the right to vote handed off to people who arrive here illegally. And as you see 11 million people streaming across our border, I'm just going to tell you, you got to watch that and recognize that if what we're already seeing in these locales like New York City and San Francisco and Washington, D.C. and others, if you're already seeing that happening, then you can just guarantee they are smelling the winds right now and saying, hey, let's give the vote to these illegals. That might help us. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. Up with Brian Taylor live in studio next. Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios for hour number 2. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international, and oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid conservative and just plain right. Well, I am in studio right now with somebody I've had the pleasure of knowing now for a number of years. So listen, I'm going to say this right now, unequivocally. Next Tuesday is Election Day. Do not be the one who says, oh man, I forgot. Or just as bad, be the one who goes, well, it doesn't matter anyway. We're a red state. Trump's going to win. There's a whole lot more on the ballot than that. You've got local races across the entire state, and you've got some statewide races that are contentious, and they need to be determined, and they will be determined by the primary, not by the general. They will absolutely. In a red state like this, a lot of times your elections, they come to a conclusion at the primary level, because we only have Republicans in the race, or if that matter, Republicans are going to win in general no matter what. So the primary is important. One of those races which, and listen, if you're not an attorney, I get it. You might look at it and go, Chief Justice, why do I care? You ought to care, because look at the national news we've got right now on the in vitro fertilization situation. That's a national story that just came out of our state Supreme Court. When you've got things that are happening at the state legislative level on gambling or school choice or transgender treatments of kids or whatever else, you may well find them going to state court, which may mean they wind up in our state Supreme Court. Well, right now, one of the most contentious races in this state is between two Republicans. Justice Sarah Stewart, who currently sits on the court, is vying to be the Chief Justice. And then the guy sitting in studio with me right now is Brian Taylor, who I've known now since, we got elected together in 2010. All right, I'm going to introduce you first. I've got your mic turned off. I'm going to say things about you, and you can't say a word about it. All right, so here's the bottom line. Brian Taylor has been a senior advisor to two governors. That's Governor Riley and Governor Ivey. He was chief legal counsel to Governor Ivey. He has also, by the way, been a JAG officer who retired at the rank of major, served on both active duty and in the Guard, did a tour in Iraq. He is also, by the way, now running for Chief Justice. We met when we both served in the Alabama State Senate together. Brian Taylor, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Always great to be in here, Phil. Good to see you again.
Now, listen, brother, I have been 4 days before a primary race, and your voice sounds a lot perkier than I would have been right now.
Well, Phil just gave me this mint that froze my mouth, but it's thank you for that. I'm trying to do 2 to 3 events per day. We're going to run through the tape. We've had an enormous surge of support in the last 2 months after the holidays. People started paying attention to this race. And I think people are more attuned right now to what's happening in the courts than they ever have been before. People understand that the courts have become the new battlegrounds. As Democrats recognize that they can't flip legislatures in red states, they're going after the courts. And so these decisions are coming before judges.
Yeah, they are. And if y'all, listen, checks and balances. We have 3 branches of government. And I think the interesting dynamic here would be, brother, if you're elected next week, then you will likely be. Is there a Democrat in the race?
There is. There's a Democrat, Judge Greg Griffin from Montgomery, got into the race on the Democrat side. He's unopposed. So whoever wins this primary will oppose Justice Griffin. Judge Griffin.
All right. That being said, if you are elected, I would anticipate then that you would also be the winner of the general election because of the fact that we are a generally red state overall. I'm not going to just go too far down that field, but I'll say this. If you are, I think you'll be the only person serving in our state government who has served in all 3 branches at that point.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'll check on that. But I'll tell you, you mentioned that. My opponent has made a big deal about experience. In fact, her ad says experience matters, and she's exactly right. She's got plenty of experience on the court. She's been a trial judge. But my experience is 22 years of legal experience crossing the military, public service, and private practice. And so, as chief counsel to the governor, I had oversight of legal operations and affairs at over 100 different executive branch agencies. That's attorneys, that's legal support staff, it's technology, it's resources. In the military, in Iraq, I participated on the team that helped stand up the military courts at the beginning of our actions there. So I bring a level of experience to this position that she just doesn't have. She's never run a large legal organization, and as you know, Phil, being Chief Justice in Alabama is like being the CEO of the entire court system.
Yeah. So to add to his point, I can remember more than once when we would do like budget hearings when you and I were in the legislature. It was the Chief Justice who would come over and speak to us. And because the Chief Justice is exactly what you said. He is the chief of justice in the state. And he basically is the boss of every local court. Think about it. If you know your district court judge, or you know your circuit court clerk, or you know anybody who works in your courthouse, their ultimate boss is the person that you're vying to be, the person sitting in the Chief Justice seat right now.
That's a very important position with a lot of opportunity to make sure that we're streamlining our processes, modernizing our courts, making sure that resources are being allocated based on needs in the court system and not based on politics. And so those are things that the Chief Justice needs to be prepared to do. And of course, I can walk over to the legislature with my experience there, and I know folks, I know how the process works. As sitting on the Budget Committee and on the Judiciary Committee, I've exercised legislative oversight of the courts already and have participated in that budgeting process. So that's experience that I'm very proud of, and I don't hesitate to talk about it when she raises the issue.
Well, and rightfully so. And I think one of the things that people I didn't know was out there until I became a part of the legislature was there's times too when there is that sort of blending of the moments. Like you said, when you walk over to the legislature, that may be because you have to present the budgets or whatever else, or the requests, the appropriations requests. But then there's also times when we as a legislative body had to request an opinion of the justices. And there were times when literally as we're working through the issues as a legislative body, we needed to know what the justices thought about where this was going to go. And I can't imagine what it would be like to know that the person sitting up there on the bench is going to give us an opinion, knowing what it's like to sit in our seats as a legislator.
Well, I think it'll be unique, but I will have the ability to understand the process of how laws are made, not only on the floor but behind the scenes, how those laws are made, and that'll be very valuable experience for a justice sitting on the bench.
And then I'm sure there's also been times when you've advised the governor on the signing of those laws too. Like I said, it's all three branches, which is crazy cool. All right, listen, I want to talk about several things. I mean, I've got a rack of stuff here, bro. So I'm gonna ping you hard on some stuff. But one of them is you just issued a press release today, so everybody's aware. We've done a lot on this show. I've got about 3 or 4 minutes for the next break. I did a lot on this show a couple of days ago about the in vitro fertilization ruling that came out. I think my audience is pretty well versed. We could talk about in the weeds of that in a moment when we come back from the break. But the first thing though is you also just issued a demand for recusal to your opponent, who currently sits on the bench. What's that about?
Well, we announced this morning that we're calling on Justice Stewart, who sits on the court and participated in this case, to recuse herself from any further votes in the IVF case. She's received $300,000, a little over $300,000 from the law firm representing the plaintiffs in that case. And so we think that under the canons of judicial ethics, she should simply just not participate anymore. People forget this case isn't over. It just started. The court has remanded this back to the trial court, and it's likely, I think, to come back before the Supreme Court again. And I don't think Alabamians like the idea of their judges ruling in cases, especially high-profile cases, when they've gotten campaign contributions of this magnitude.
Yeah. So just to reiterate what you just said, the IVF ruling that we got from the Alabama Supreme Court that has caused international news in the last few days, it did not end the case. It basically reopened the case, if you get down to it. It allows it to be remanded back to the lower court with directions on what they're supposed to consider when they go at it again. And so the odds are that as big a deal as that case is, that they might try it again, and then it goes all the way back up to the Supreme Court again. And she took $300,000 from the same firm.
It's $300,000, and let me be clear, it's $300,000 from the plaintiff's law firm, but it arrived to her campaign through political action committees, through 3 separate political action committees.
Okay.
But it's fairly traceable. You just go to the Secretary of State's website; it's all there. You can go to my website. We posted something on it today. I think another couple of outlets have picked up on the news release. But look, here's the thing: we need judges who are committed to not just being fair and unbiased and impartial, but who are committed to the appearance of being fair and impartial. People need to be able to have trust in the outcomes in the courts, and that's why we have in the canons of judicial ethics that judges should recuse themselves whenever there is an appearance that they won't be able to exercise their responsibilities impartially because of campaign contributions. And that's exactly what this scenario is about.
Wow. There's so much money in politics. Listen, we're going to wind up taking a break right now. When we come back, though, I want to get your thoughts on this IVF ruling. And then I want to talk about some other things like a judge just took Trump off the Illinois ballot. Did y'all hear about this? So when you get a rogue judge, it can make a difference. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right, just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, we're back in studio right now with Brian Taylor, who is running for Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. All right, so Brian, you and I talked just briefly before the break there about the IVF ruling, the in vitro fertilization ruling that came out last week from the state Supreme Court. It's garnered national attention, maybe even international attention. And it's raised a lot of eyebrows, I think partly because it's been misrepresented to a great degree by the liberal media. They want to circle back. They found their way to get back into the abortion fight, I think. And to speaking politically for a minute, I think that they know the southern border is a losing topic. The economy is a losing topic. The energy sector is a losing topic. But abortion, oh my gosh. So they're trying to figure out a way to create the abortion argument in the IVF ruling. But it's still got some nuances and it's still got some meaning to the court system. And you would be dealing with it in a sense if you are elected to Chief Justice. What are your thoughts on this ruling?
Well, first, I agree with you. And I think it's ironic that the Democrats nationally and Biden, he sent his top health official to Alabama as if we were having some kind of natural disaster that we need the federal government's help because of this case. It's ironic that they're seizing on this because, as we just discussed, it's Democrat trial lawyers that are funneling money through PACs to my opponent's race to push this effort. Here's the thing about the case: everybody in that case, including the defendant IVF clinic, agreed that those human embryos were human beings, were lives, that life begins at fertilization. So that really wasn't even the issue in the case.
Right.
The case was about punitive damages, whether somebody can sue an IVF clinic for punitive damages. And when the court brought down that decision, it raised attention, obviously raised the concern among IVF clinics. Hey, when we can't be open, we can't have this open-ended liability and continue to operate. We need some clarity. We need some certainty here. But the legislature is going to come in and is going to address that. And I think you're right. Nationally, folks have seized on this and tried to make some connection between this and the Dobbs case that overturned Roe v. Wade. There's no connection. This case is not about abortion at all. Overturning Roe v. Wade didn't have anything to do with this case. But they're going to seize on that, and they're going to try to make political hay out of it in the presidential campaign and in the congressional
and I don't want to go too far because I know it puts you in an awkward spot. I mean, you running for office can't be talking about matters of pending legislation and cases that are still before the bar, or before the bench. But the fact is, even today, we are watching the legislative process as they attempt to reconcile with the recent ruling. One of my concerns, and I've already shared this with the audience one of my concerns is that in an effort to rush out and mitigate the screams of the liberals who are going to scream no matter what we do, that somehow or another they can quickly do a knee-jerk legislation and it'll be better. But then they run the risk of knee-jerk legislation never being good legislation. Maybe even undoing some of what we fought for the last 45 years in the pro-life arena. And I know that you're very pro-life, and you are. I know that for a fact. You're very pro-life. That being said, listen, I'm going to move on from the topic because I can't get you to opine deeply on that unless you want to add something.
Well, I think I can say this, and I'm not saying anything that's not being discussed publicly. I mean, there's an opportunity here for the legislature to do this right and to protect life. The sanctity of life, and at the same time prohibit or stop lawsuit abuse against IVF clinics. Look, opening up businesses, hospitals, IVF clinics to unmitigated risk of punitive damages and uncertain liability, that's what drives businesses out of the state. That's what drives healthcare providers out of the state. We need to make sure that we have clear laws that let everybody know what their liability, what their exposure to risk is going to be, and judges need to enforce those laws as they're written. So it's very important for the legislature to get this right. I agree with you. And we may end up, you and I have both been there, you may end up with some piece of legislation that overshoots, but the legislature will have the opportunity to come back and correct that. So there's a process. It's a democratic process, and it's absolutely important that judges apply the law as written and don't legislate from the bench.
Okay, perfect segue to where I was going to go next. Because a moment ago, before you even walked in the studio, I did a whole section in the middle of the illegal, immigrant invasion that we've had as a nation right now. In the middle of, and there's Trump up on the screens right now, both CNN and Fox covering his press conference at Eagle Pass, Texas right now. But in the middle of all of the first part of my show, I had one story, and that was about the city of New York had passed a law, the city of New York, their city council, which, is like New York's population is almost 2 times the size of Alabama, but New York City. But the city of New York had passed a law to allow illegals to vote in their elections. At the very least, non-citizens, some would say it would be construed as illegals, but at the very least, green card holders and other non-citizens would be allowed to vote. It was their state Supreme Court that just ruled yesterday that was a violation of their state constitution. So, what we're looking at even right there is a ruling in which a state Supreme Court had to step in and unwind things that were being done in other parts of the state.
Yeah, look, I hope people are starting to pay attention to the importance of these state court races. We're lucky in Alabama that we elect our judges because that means we get to elect judges who share our philosophy and our values. But as you're looking at state Supreme Courts around the country, look what Colorado did, taking Trump off the ballot. This judge in Illinois taking Trump off the ballot.
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute.
And so, when judges do their job and apply the law as written, even if the outcome is not the preferred outcome from a policy perspective, the people, it recognizes that we're a government of laws and not a government of men. It allows the people to enact their policy preferences as intended by the founders through the legislators that they elected to do that. And so that's absolutely critical. And, we have too many liberal judges who are trying to weaponize the court system.
All right, listen, we're with Brian Taylor right now, who is running for Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. He's with us here in studio. We're going to come back from this break, and we'll start pinging a little bit more in that same vein we just had a moment ago, like the fact that Trump was just kicked off the ballot by a judge, a liberal judge. It matters. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation, this one, Alabama. Y'all don't talk about this show goes like way down south of Birmingham and up north of Huntsville and Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and even Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. All right, I'm back here in studio right now with Brian Taylor, former state senator Brian Taylor, former advisor to two governors Brian Taylor, former major JAG officer Brian Taylor, who is running now to be Chief Justice because you just needed something else on your resume, I guess, bro. That's all there is to it.
Well, it's important. It's an important race, and I just couldn't believe we were going to let the most liberal justice on the Supreme Court, my opponent, walk into this seat uncontested. She announced a year ago and was uncontested for about 7 months. And so I was doing some voluntary legal work for the party at the time. I said, well, if nobody else is going to run, I'll run, because conservative Republicans need an alternative on the ballot that they can go into the polls and hold their head high and know that they're getting a conservative Republican and not somebody like Sarah Stewart, who's funded by Democrat trial lawyers and liberal special interests.
Wow, you've said that a few times.
I say that a lot everywhere I go because look, people need to know she's running an incredible ad campaign. She's got billboards, she's got TV, she's got radio. $1.2 million just since December has come to her from Democrat and liberal trial lawyers. I'm not making this up. You can look at it on the Secretary of State's website. But I know the average person. Your listeners don't have time. They worry about working, and they're going to their kids' ball games, and so people just need to be very careful about trusting what they see on the TV and pay attention to shows like this and really listen to us talk about the issues and talk about the campaign.
All right, so listen, I want to hit a few things with you. Endorsements matter. You've got some good ones. Fundraising matters. She's got a lot of fundraising, like you just pointed out. You've got your own. But then there's also, I think it's incumbent upon us to look and see where the person has been. So I mentioned a few things about your resume a while ago, but here's what a lot of people may or may not even know. On this show, we have been constantly dealing with the issue of public libraries. Yep. And we have dealing with the fact that there's so much tripe being put into front of our kids in libraries. We are absolutely on board with Moms for Liberty. They have been an organization that we've had on this show multiple times, and I recently sponsored a table at one of their dinners with Riley Gaines. A lot of folks may not even know. And this feels like such a softball interview, but it's so true that this really actually happened. You recently gave away pro bono time to assist in one of these fights, did you not?
Well, a lot of people were upset about the books, what books were being put in front of our children in the public libraries, as you just said, and Republican Party Chairman John Wall did a great job getting a resolution passed at the State Library Board. The Alabama Public Library Service got a resolution passed that said they would start allowing people to submit the titles and authors of books that they wanted to challenge as inappropriate for children. But interestingly, the Public Library Service said, "Well, we'll receive the list, but we're not going to make it public." They told the press, we're not going public with this. Well, What good is keeping the list if parents don't know what books to look out for in the library? So a group of concerned parents and grandparents called me, and I said, sure, I'll help. It wasn't hard. We filed I threatened a lawsuit, I guess, but we also filed a public records request, and thankfully we were successful getting the Alabama Public Library Service to backtrack on that position and send us the list of books. And so that's on my website now too. Unfortunately, every time you want to see how the list is updated, you have to file a new public records request. It'll take probably an act of the legislature to get them to put something like that on their website, which they should just do without the legislature. But we were happy to get that done for folks so they can go see what books are in our public libraries that are inappropriate for kids.
Major issues that are currently out there as a part of the news cycle, school choice. You were there in 2013 when we passed the Alabama Accountability Act.
Yeah, and then after I left the Senate, went back into private practice, I was hired by a group called the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty.
Absolutely.
To represent the interest of private schools, private Christian schools, and making sure they weren't discriminated against when that law was put into effect. You may recall AEA, who opposed the law and wanted it declared unconstitutional, fought us on that, but we were successful in having the Alabama Accountability Act upheld, and so that's part of my record as a lawyer in private practice is defending religious liberty and school choice.
So another one of the things that you and I So Brian and I, like I said, served together in the Alabama State Senate. We actually sat next to each other on the Senate floor. Actually, it was you and then Bill Holtzclaw and then me. So Holtzclaw was our intermediary. I'd say hit him, tell him.
We had a great suite of people who probably don't realize that we all shared a secretary, and it's a little bit like living in a college dorm room. It's not exactly the nicest offices in the state house.
You and I, though, I really feel like you and I were the two leads on the effort to cut legislative pay. A lot of folks, I mean, by the way, try to find me another one somewhere out there where a legislative body or any government official has voluntarily cut their own pay and also cut it for years to come. And you and I, it was your bill, and I actually debated it at the well of the Senate, and we got it passed to cut our own pay.
Well, your support was crucial, and I think a lot of us coming in as freshmen that year understood that the legislature really needed to be cut back a little bit, and remember who the boss is. They had voted themselves that under Democrat control. They voted themselves a massive 60% pay raise, and you and I and others campaigned on repealing that. And I was very happy to see that done. And that goes to the importance of fiscal responsibility. You were the chairman of the Committee on Fiscal Responsibility. I was your vice chairman, but pleased to work with you. We did a great job on that committee of making sure that there's a number of policies that we implemented that made state government more accountable and more fiscally responsible. And so that's something I want to bring to the courts too, is a real goal of making our courts more streamlined, more fiscally responsible and accountable. And we need to do that because the courts are obviously an important part of the general fund budget, which is always fighting for money.
Always fighting for money. And yeah, it's a huge deal. And yet at the same time, who gets the job matters. So a couple things have happened in the last 24 hours. A little while ago, we were talking about why it's so important to have people that are not agenda driven, that they are not, by the way, we want them to be conservatives, hopefully proven conservatives. Vast difference between being a Republican and being a conservative. That's why I wanted to, before I even got to this next question, I wanted to bring up the fact that you have been in the fight to repeal pay. You've been in the fight on the library situation. You've been in the fight. I know you were definitely in the fight against illegal casinos, and some of the things we're seeing right now in the legislative process are just awful. And you've been in the gambling fights neck deep. And that being said, we just saw another state, but we just saw yesterday a judge flagrantly decide to just take President Trump off the ballot in Illinois. And it goes again to the very heart of what it means to elect people to the bench.
Well, you're exactly right. And I want to be very clear, Phil, because I don't want to leave anybody with misconstruing what I'm saying. It is important for judges to be fair. And that means that sometimes plaintiffs are going to win. Sometimes defendants are going to win.
Sure.
But every party in the courtroom needs to know, hey, this judge is going to rule based on the law. This judge is not going to make things up from the bench. He's not going to assume powers that he or she doesn't have. And that's what I'm committed to. The law, upholding the Constitution. We got to have the rule of law in this country or everything falls apart. When you have judges like that who are just willy-nilly deciding that they know what's best for everybody else, our democracy breaks down. We're a government of laws, not a government of men. And so, like I said earlier, we've got to make sure that our judges respect the role of the legislature. And that goes back to what we were talking about, too, the experience I have in the legislature, understanding that role as a representative of the people to implement and enact their policy preferences. That's the job of the legislature. And I'm going to respect that and honor that as Chief Justice, so that we're going to apply the law as written by the legislators to the cases before us.
Well, somebody asked a question on the show yesterday, and I gave my review on it. So I won't poison the well. I'll let you see if you have thoughts on this. But they asked, why do we elect our judges? Wouldn't it be better to not have politics in the selection of who's governing or who is working from the bench? And I had a response to that. But give me your thoughts on the idea of electing judges.
Well, I think it's certainly a double-edged sword. You risk the possibility of electing judges who do have a very political, personal agenda. The only agenda I have, and this is what it's so important for people to pay attention to, the only agenda I have is fairness, predictability, and consistent outcomes across the courts. And so when I talk on the campaign trail, when I'm here talking with you, I'm not talking about a personal agenda or a political agenda. I'm talking about a judicial philosophy. And we are lucky to be able to elect judges that share a philosophy of a conservative philosophy of interpreting the law as written, interpreting the law as originally understood by the people who wrote it, and not making up new definitions for words like woman, but instead giving meaning to the law as it was intended by the people who passed it. So I talk about that all day long. I'm not afraid to talk about that, and we're fortunate in Alabama to be able to elect judges based on that. And we have to be careful. That's what we're electing judges on too.
Well, absolutely. And I think the other point that I made yesterday too was if we didn't elect them, they'd have to get to the bench somehow, which would mean very likely by appointment. And then you're just run the risk that whoever is the local mayor for the municipal courts or for the governor who's been elected to appoint the circuit and whatever bench is being appointed, they still have to be appointed by someone who was probably elected, and then you never know what you're going to get. If you had Randall Woodfin, mayor of Birmingham, appointing, you don't have to comment on this, but Randall Woodfin, liberal mayor of Birmingham, appointing people to the courts, what would that do to our court system? I would much rather know that in races like our Supreme Court Chief Justice that we have a statewide review at the ballot, and that 6 years later or 4 years later, we can choose not to reelect them.
Yeah, if you get a judge who's not applying the law, then you can show that judge the door and bring in a new one. And I'm reminded of what you said. I tell people I'm a Scalia-style originalist. And one of my favorite opinions written by Justice Scalia was his dissent in the Obergefell decision. That's the gay marriage case. He said he didn't really have a personal preference one way or the other on that issue, but he was writing in dissent to express his concern about who makes the law. And he said, do we want the law made by 9 appointed judges who don't stand for election before the people in Washington, D.C., or do we want the law to be made by the people? And that's why it's important in Alabama that we have elected judges who respect, again, the legislative prerogative there.
All right, brother, we're going to take one more break. We'll come back from this break, wrap it up with Brian Taylor. It's been good to see you, man. And I know you probably got a whole weekend of campaigning ahead of you. But Tuesday's coming.
We got pancake breakfast on Saturday.
You know all the goodness.
Love that stuff.
All the goodness. All right. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, in studio. Brian Taylor. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. All right, listen, we are finishing up our time with Brian Taylor. I know you probably got stuff to do tonight. You probably got stuff to do tomorrow.
And I've got lots of events. I got lots of calls to make. We're still trying to raise money to compete against the trial lawyer money coming into my campaign, my opponent's campaign. So. And I want to say, if there's anybody out there that's willing to share their resources with our campaign and help push us over the top, they can go to my website at briantaylor.com. That's Brian with a Y, Taylor.com, and there's a link there to donate. But I appreciate whether it's a financial contribution or just whether it's getting on Facebook and sharing our message with friends and family and folks you go to church with. We've got to get the word out in this sort of a guerrilla campaign here, since we haven't the challenge against the trial lawyer money in this Republican
and
race.
Speaking of which, I just saw an article this morning that you've gotten some major endorsements, but two of them that are actually out there working on your behalf right now. Apparently, the Realtors Association are very concerned about what it could mean to have a less than conservative judge chiefing the Supreme Court. And then you've also got an organization that is very, very much in the pro-life fight that is out there duking it out for you. Apparently, I know you don't coordinate with those directly, but I just saw them listed. There's a story here on The Guardian, came out this morning, that says that there is an organization that is literally dedicated to the idea of fair courts and pro-life movement that is out there campaigning for you right now.
Well, we were doing everything we can to try to compete with the trial lawyer money that my opponent's getting on the air, and I was obviously happy. I'm not familiar with the folks at that group, but we were happy to see that I was getting that support. We've gotten support from other groups too nationally. Veterans for Trump has endorsed my campaign. The National Legal Forum has endorsed my campaign.
Yeah.
So it's great to see groups, conservative organizations around the country standing up to what is make no mistake, there's a concerted campaign out of the Democrat headquarters to get involved in these state Supreme Court races, to pick off these judicial seats one by one in Republican primaries.
And what's so interesting is we think of ourselves, Alabama, as a deep red state. And yeah, I mean, red doesn't necessarily mean conservative, but still, at the very least, Republican. It's a very deep red state, and yet they still see targets of opportunity within our own state. We're not California, we're not New York, we're not Illinois, but they still see targets of opportunity here, and they will do all they can. They, being the left, they will do all they can to unravel what has been built over time that makes us what I would call a bastion of freedom in the U.S. process.
Well, look, Sarah Stewart said yesterday, an article came out about how much trial lawyer money she was receiving in her campaign, $1.2 million. And her response was, well, don't worry about that because the trial lawyers have been giving to Republicans for 15 years. Well, that's true because they've realized that it's a red state now and they can't win Democrat elections. So they're now shifting their strategy to support Republicans. But one of the things I talk about on the trail is we need more judges and more Republican elected officials across the board who have the fortitude, that's with a capital F, the fortitude to stand on the conservative principles that we promise people we believe in and stand for.
All right. Well, all right. You gave us a website. We know where to find you. Appreciate you making time today. I know you had to drive up from Birmingham. It's so much better to be in studio. You could have called in, I know. Of course, you and I go way back, so it's always good to see you no matter what. And, I am in the position where I am really not. I make it a point not to do endorsements, but I think the audience has quickly gleaned who I'm for in this race. And brother, I'm for you.
Thank you.
And
I appreciate
and
that.
I don't mean that a little bit. I mean like I'm proud to know you. I'm proud to call you friend. You and I have been in the trenches together. We have fought legal battles together. And I'm of the mind that you're the right guy for the job. So
that means a lot,
for what it's worth.
especially this close to the race. And you're one of the you're one of the guys who served in the Senate. You still enjoy one of the reputation as one of the most conservative members ever to have served in the Alabama legislature. So thank you for that support. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it, brother. And listen, I own this microphone, so I can do what I want with it. So I'm going to pray right now. You ready? Here we go.
Ready.
God Almighty, Lord, I bless your name. And I thank you for the fact that we have a chance to cast votes. I thank you that we live in a country where we can vote for even the smallest of offices and the greatest of offices. And I pray right now that you bless Brian as he goes forward. God, give him strength for these final days. Give him favor. Lord, give him good winds at his back. And Father, I pray in Jesus' name you remove every obstacle and bless him as he does what he does best. and all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, bro.
I'll
Appreciate
also
you.
bring up he's got some support in the text over here. Teresa from Town Creek says, "Thank you for having Brian Taylor on today. I was undecided on who to vote for until today."
Thank you, Teresa. I appreciate
Hey,
that. Please
there you
tell
go.
everybody you know.
Rightside Ruffians coming in hard. All right, listen. Coming up next, we're going to be switching gears. I've got Eric Johnston, who is himself a legal scholar, somebody that Brian and I both worked with quite handily down in Montgomery on conservative policy issues like pro-life bills and anti-gambling bills and things like that. Eric Johnson should be calling in right at the top of the hour to give us an update on some things that have been happening even today in our state legislature. What are they doing right now? We just saw that something passed, and I can't even give you the details on it because I haven't read it yet, but something just passed in the state house on this in vitro fertilization thing. Worries me when I see legislation come together and fly that fast. It could mean very, very good things, or it could mean somebody didn't think this thing through. We'll talk to Eric Johnson about what he knows. We'll talk to Eric Johnson about why the Senate Tourism Committee met today for the gambling bill and then canceled their meeting at the last minute. I mean, you got to look at this and go, what in God's name is happening? School choice, where are we right now? Is it moving? Eric Johnson hopefully has some answers for us. You guys stay tuned. Coming up next, knee jerks and dice rollers. That's where we are. We'll be right back. Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studio. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 3. So this has been some more kind of a full day. I mean, like we've already had like one whole topic that lit up the text lines. I can't even get to all the texts that I've got right now, so hopefully I'll catch up with you guys. Keep them coming. We'll catch up before the show's over. And then on top of that, we just had Brian Taylor in studio. As always, great to see my friend. His big race is really developing quite well, and the elections are Tuesday. And then we got stuff happening right now in Montgomery. And y'all, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's happening in like live stream mode. It is happening as we speak, in real time. My friend Eric Johnston, who is been in the trenches fighting for conservative public policy for years, head of the Alabama Pro-Life Coalition, head of the Southeast Law Institute, and he is on the line with us right now to give us some updates. Eric Johnston, how are you doing?
Well, Phil, I'm doing well. I appreciate your show. I appreciate when you were in the Senate and Brian Taylor was in the Senate. Y'all were good guys and made it a lot easier than what it is right now. You're right. Things are moving fast and they're very complicated.
Well, listen, I tell you what, you've had a chance today to monitor and even perhaps interact with the issues before the legislative body, and not the least of which is this in vitro fertilization, which you came on the show like almost immediately the day the ruling came out, and we began to dissect it as best we could together. And since then, the liberal media has grabbed it and made it the cause celeb, and the legislature today is already passing bills. I get really worried, Eric, when I see what I call knee-jerk legislation, because I think that good public policy is formed well into the cold light of day, and yet this feels like one that's being jammed together in a back room. What happened today?
Well, it was put together in a back room, and it takes a minimum of 3 days to get a bill, through a chamber. And this bill, House and Senate versions, both went through in 3 days. It took a priority. Of course, we talked last week about the court case, that plurality decision that said the unborn child included the frozen egg embryos. So what happened, it became international. Everybody's concerned about it because this is, to my knowledge, and what everyone is saying, and I don't doubt it, it's the first time in history that it's happened. And so it put Alabama's legislature right in the crosshairs of, well, what are you going to do about it? So what they did about it is they did what UAB asked them to do about it. Extremely disappointed in the leadership and in some of the members of the legislature who permitted this to dominate the way it is and in the fashion and the way that they did it. And I'll just tell you in shorthand, the first bill that they were going to do basically gave total immunity to hospitals and clinics that did IVF for anything. So they came back and they actually narrowed it down to that wrongful death statute of a minor that the court case dealt with. We had a sunset provision that it would only go to April 1st, 2025 in order to work out good regulations for IVF. But they took the sunset out. So today they debated this bill in the House starting in the morning. They got done with it. The Senate bill lasted to just a few minutes ago. All day long in the legislature they debated it. And they basically came out with an immunity. The people that were sponsoring and speaking down in the well, they were saying, oh, we're going to get right on it. We're working on it. People are working on it right now. But I don't know about that. I don't trust them. And, like you said, backroom deals moving so fast, it's hard to tell, really what they really will do.
Well, so Eric, let me ask you. I mean, I'm always curious because I have never seen something that allows any level of immunity to get through what I would call the scrutiny of the Trial Lawyers Association. And there were times when they were helpful, other times when they were just trying to preserve their right to get punitive damages. But I'm hearing the trial lawyers were okay with this immunity piece, that's when I wonder, okay, where's the rub? What did they do? How did they get? Why is this thing okay? Your thoughts on that?
It's not really okay, but the trial lawyers, the first version of the bill was that total immunity that I talked about. The trial lawyers quickly jumped on that, and they at least helped, and probably you'd say led the way on just limiting it only to that wrongful death statute.
Okay.
And the Democrats, surprisingly today, the speeches from them were better than the speeches from the Republicans. They sounded almost pro-life, which I know they get mixed up on pro-life and sanctity of life and abortion and all those issues. And let me say quickly, this is not about abortion.
No.
The Alabama Pro-Life Coalition does not oppose IVF. We think it's a good thing. We've got a lot of members that have children that way.
Yeah.
It's just not regulated at all in Alabama. And so this court case is like a wake-up call. All of a sudden, what's going on? And the biggest question, the main question is, what do you do with the frozen embryos that are not used? How do you deal with that? And that's what's got to be worked out. We don't want to oppose IVF. We want that to keep going, but we got to figure out how to limit it, how to regulate it in a reasonable way.
Well, I totally agree. Listen, I got to ask you about something else because IVF may have dominated the legislature, but other things were going on nonetheless. And you've been neck deep in the anti-gambling fights. And I guess we ought to be clear. What we're talking about is the corrupt manner in which the bills have been portrayed as being, great, the panacea of all of our needs, and yet, violating almost every principle that Republicans say we stand for in the process. But the gambling bill that came out of the House, it was rushed out of the House, is now in the Senate, appears to have bogged down. It was supposed to come to a hearing yesterday. It didn't. It was supposed to have come to a hearing today, and apparently it didn't. What do you know?
Well, what I know is the gross version of the bill that came out of the House was as corrupt as any. Well, I won't say it's as bad as what Milton McGregor did this last year in the legislature trying to control it, but it was close. It gave immunity to just about every act that the Gambling Commission made their own police force, not subject to courts, do what they want to do. The casinos were doled out to the special interests. That bill went to the Senate, and the Senate, ever since they got it, apparently has had problems with it, but they really won't tell us what problems they're having with it. And I think a lot of the members don't know. Yesterday, I was in the hearing when it was supposed to come up, public hearing, and on the bill. Well, the meeting started, but for 20 minutes, everyone just sat there. And Roger Smitherman, again, I'm agreeing with the Democrat for a change, he gave a speech and said, what are we doing sitting here? We don't even know what bill is coming. We hadn't read it. Is there a bill? So 20 minutes after the hour, several people come in, and they say, well, in essence, we don't have the bill. We don't have anything. They had the public hearing, which was kind of, almost like Alice in Wonderland, people testifying about something they didn't know what it was. But they were all opponents, including the Porch Indians. They were against it, whatever it is.
Wow.
Well, they rescheduled. They adjourned that meeting. They carried the bill over, the non-existent bill. They scheduled it for 10 this morning, and they had to cancel it again because they weren't in agreement. So whether it's a plain lottery bill, whether it's a bill that's got some other, I've heard, it's going to allow the existing places to continue operating, which presumably slot machine operations, or whether it's got casinos. Who knows at this point? I don't think the Senate knows, and what's going on in that back room is not very clear. There's probably a few people that know, but they would not, you don't even know who those people are.
Well, I said to somebody last night, it's going to come out. It's going to be the Porch Creeks running a lottery and giving KIV a tribal title and lands.
Chief Ivory or something. Well, I tell you, if they do just a straight lottery, that will give the Porch Indians the ability to have a casino, because under the IGRA, the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, lottery is Class 3 gaming, which means the Indians on their tribal lands can have full casinos. So Alabama gets a regular paper lottery. The Indians have 3 places where they've got full card, roulette wheel, everything kind of casino.
Yeah, it's nuts. People, I remember when I first got down there, I was amazed at the level of nuance in the law regarding gambling, and that's why we found out later on that Milton McGregor's team was actually paying members of the legislative staff to put keywords into the legislation, because the keywords mattered later in a legal battle. Listen, Eric, if you don't mind, we got to take a break. Would you mind hanging on during the break, and we'll come right back and talk to you about other things happening in the legislature, all right?
No, not at all.
Okay, thanks. We're on with Eric Johnston right now, longtime culture warrior. He's down there fighting the good fight for conservative causes in Montgomery. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Like saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, so we're right back right now with Eric Johnston, who's held on the line for us. Eric, thank you for taking some extra time. Let me ask you this, Eric, school choice. Okay. You've been down there. What are you hearing about school choice right now? How is it moving? Is it going to happen this year, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a very good chance. I mean, the governor's got behind it and done a lot of work on it. Fortunately, her office adopted a lot of what we had worked on before the session, trying to include private schools, church schools, home schools, and I think they've done a good job on it. There's been some, I think, difficulty with how to handle the home school situation. Right now, there's a little uncertainty about whether the bill covers that adequately. We've always tried to, in working with religious freedom and parents' rights, to protect both the church schools and the homeschoolers. Homeschools are basically unregulated in the state, and the Department of Education has kind of a hands-off attitude. So when you start doing some kind of state regulation to include them, it becomes a little problematical about how do you include them. But I think the bill has got some good possibilities of passing this year. There's not really any opposition to it that's major. Of course, you never know what the teachers' union and the Department of Education may do, but they have not opposed it as greatly this year as they did last year.
Well, I'm anxious to see where it goes. I mean, I obviously what I don't want to do is let the quest for the perfect outweigh the ability to gain the good. And there are things about the current version that I understand, moved through the House that I am less enamored with than I was when it first started. I would have loved to have seen last year's Price Act pass, but all that to say, where we are now is sure a far sight better than where it was, last, 2 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. And, there's a certain amount of compromise and pragmatism you got to have in the State House. You got, very red, bright lines on some issues like sanctity of life, maybe religious freedom. And, like religious freedom in the education savings account, which is the basis for how you do the school choice, is important. And, if you don't maintain your religious freedom, then you don't do it. But, that's been worked in. We've got those components in there. But, it's not ideal because you got a lot of big forces operating on this, and education has been dominated for, decades by the public authorities. And we've had homeschools, and, they started in the probably late 80s, 90s, they got really going. Church schools started in the early 80s, and they become major opportunities for parents to have, but they're quite expensive sometimes. So school choice and the concept of the education savings account is very good to help parents get their non-public education opportunities. Well,
I would agree with that. And we've got people even here at Rightside that have homeschool kids that would love to see something in place. Hey, listen, before I let you go, I want to return real quickly to the IVF question. I had one thing that I forgot to bring up earlier. You mentioned that they're trying to make this a fight, the left's trying to make this a fight about abortion. It's not. But I did see that House Minority Leader Anthony Daniels, he did have a bill that, in my opinion, would have unraveled some of the law regarding what is life under Alabama law. And in your opinion, we're not looking at, right now it appears they have dealt solely with the question of immunity from litigation, or at least from punitive damages. But we didn't do anything to dismantle the fight that we've had for 45 years in the wake of Roe, did we?
Oh, no, not at all. And that's our main concern. And, as I said earlier, the Democrats spoke very well today, but they would be for amending the constitutional amendment about the unborn to put in some exceptions. That would be where they would go on abortion. And I think we've tried to tell everyone we're for IVF, we need to regulate it, but this is not about abortion, and we're not going to get into abortion. But, the national media and those kind of interests are trying to make it about abortion.
Well, Eric Johnson, thanks for your years in the fight. Thanks always, too, for being a friend of the show. We'll have you back on again sometime soon. But in the meantime, we'll just keep our eyes peeled on what's going on in Montgomery.
Great. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate you. By the way, if you want to talk about somebody who's, I actually gave, when I was at the Alabama Policy Institute, I actually gave Eric Johnston an award. We call it the Policy Warrior Award. It's an awesome presentation. But I was proud to give Eric Johnson an award for his years of service to the state, fighting for conservative values, sometimes standing on his own if he had to fight for conservative values. What a great guy. So listen, we're going to be hitting the break here in a moment, and I will be catching up on emails or text messages from you. I got to tell you, there's a few other things that are in the news regarding what I'm calling knee jerks and dice rollers, and I found this one to be fascinating. So the whole thing about, diversity, equity, and inclusion, we've got a bill in the legislature right now, and this is not a knee-jerk bill. I'll be honest, this is a good one. This particular bill, Senate Bill 129, is often referred to as the Divisive Concepts Bill. Well, of course, liberal Mayor Randall Woodfin of Birmingham, he doesn't like it. He's gonna encourage athletes to leave the state of Alabama and the University of Alabama. Students at UAH yesterday decided to hold a protest. Story here on WHNT says several schools in the state of Alabama saw students walk out in protest on Wednesday over a Senate bill that would ban public funding for equity and inclusion initiatives. One of those schools was the University of Alabama at Huntsville. UAH students were protesting and holding signs asking lawmakers to kill Senate Bill 129. One organizer says, "I want our senator in Huntsville that supported this bill to know we do not support this bill whatsoever." Okay, well, I think walking out of your class was probably not really very helpful. Maybe you want to go to Montgomery and actually talk to people. I'm just going to point out that holding a separate protest where no one sees you and it doesn't impact the process is going to be limited in its effect, just if you know what I'm saying. And then the last one, y'all, listen, Birmingham Southern College. How many times have we talked about this? Birmingham Southern College wants a tens of millions of taxpayer dollar bailout. They have so screwed up their finances. And I'll be honest, I'm bothered by the fact that not only did we pass something last year that allows them to get a quote unquote loan from the state of Alabama, but this year there's an effort to amend it and make it so that, it's just going to have to happen. There's no qualification, there's no vetting, there's no fiduciary responsibility to the state. No, we're just going to give you the money if you ask. Several members of Senate Finance and Taxation Education Committee expressed their concerns about language that effectively required the state to give loans like this. Senator Arthur Orr said, if this bill passes, we're going to have trouble distinguishing from future colleges that may come in within a financial distress situation. That bill doesn't need to pass. That's a knee-jerk bill. That is a knee-jerk bill. All right, folks, knee-jerks and dice rollers, big doings in Montgomery. We'll come right back and catch up on some text messages and more. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right, just covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation. This one, y'all, this one, Alabama. I'm talking about this show goes like way, way, way down south of Birmingham and up north of Huntsville and Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and even Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. Hey, by the way, I'll tell you who else covers a lot of ground. That's our friends at Southern Immediate Care. Southern Immediate Care, a chain of clinics that covers a huge swath of ground across North Alabama, places like Gadsden, Anniston, Atala, 6 more locations around the Birmingham area, newest one being in Helena. Listen, Southern Immediate Care, all their locations open 7 days a week. They will see all ages, and I'm talking about like geriatric to pediatric. They'll see all of them. And they're also open 7 days a week, so if you get sick on a Saturday, you can not have to wait till Monday. And listen, in all honesty, this is who I use. It is. I use Southern Immediate Care, and I don't use them because they advertise. I was already using them. I was always impressed by how clean, professional, friendly they were, how much they helped me. And then at the same time, I thought, you know what? I could brag on this. I'm just going to ask them would they advertise. And it turns out they were owned by a Rightside ruffian. So how easy was that? Anyway, Southern Immediate Care. You find the location nearest to you. You head on down there. While you're filling out your forms, tell somebody you heard about it on Rightside Radio. I would appreciate that very much. Listen, by the way, I got to say the podcast is really, so I said it yesterday, but I'm bragging on Big Rig again. The quality of the podcast element. So every day we take the show and then we sort of, now we really clean it up, enhance the audio. You've been doing that, and it's uploaded. So if you miss part of the show or you want to hear something again, you want to send it to a friend, any podcasting medium out there, you can find it on Apple, Podbean, whatever. You can also go to our website, rightsideradio.org, and just find the podcast that way. How are we doing, by the way? You checked the stats lately?
Yeah, we're doing good. We're up 23% this month.
Really? Mm-hmm. In 1 month, up 23%.
And we also have about 30 downloads from Poland that I'm seeing. So there's somebody in Poland that's downloading the podcast.
No, dude, there's some bodies in Poland.
Some bodies, okay.
Yeah. That's awesome. Poland. Who's our number one state? Still Alabama?
I can't see the state, but
we used to have the state map where you could see, and it would tell you. And for the longest time, California was our second biggest audience. But
I have to look into that.
Well, nonetheless, the podcast is going great. You want to get a chance to take care of that. You want to hear it twice. You want to send it to somebody. We would love for you to do it. All right. Hey, listen. A lot of text messages. Man, wow. So some of these. I hope you guys have been listening to the show because I'm going to read some text messages that will probably date back to things that we talked about, like in the first hour, because that's the way this show has been. I'm just going to reach back here. Don from Jackson County. Jackson County. How about that? Up yonder in Scottsboro way. John from Jackson County says, I've been to China a couple of dozen times, and I've been to a church service in a small village. It was in the preacher's own house. They don't hide their faith, but at the same time, they try to keep a low profile. As long as they don't try to make trouble, the local authorities don't bother with them. I'm guessing he's responding to my thing about, Christian nationalism being the big boogaboo right now. Okay, I'm not sure what you're telling me, Don, but thanks for the text. Steve from Huntsville says Biden's in Brownsville by other reports. You're right. I said earlier, El Paso, and even the lovely Charlene texted me and said, no, it's Brownsville. Yeah, he picked. So if you're not familiar, Trump and Biden both did what might be called competing trips to the southern border today. Interesting. Funny how that worked out. I can't help but wonder if somebody coordinated. The president's schedule is public, so you know where he's going to be. I can't help but wonder if Trump said, we're going down the same day. I don't know, but I would not be a bit surprised.
I bet he did.
You think?
I bet he did.
I would not be a bit surprised.
Yeah.
It'd be just like him. But the interesting thing is, Biden went to Brownsville, which does not have near the issues. It is, I don't want to say everything's good, but, it's like, okay, Brownsville, well, Trump went to Eagle Pass. Eagle Pass is like ground zero for the mass migration. It has been at epic levels in Eagle Pass, tens of thousands a day. And so Eagle Pass is where Trump was. And by the way, Trump was there with the governor. So the governor of the state, who's a Republican, I get it, but the governor of the state is there to meet the former president while the actual current sitting president is in Brownsville and the governor's not there with him. Let that speak for itself. What else we got here? Jay Graham from Decatur says, Mark Levine played the Dick Lamb speech, "I have a plan to destroy America," on his radio show. This is exactly what's going on in America today. Yeah. JT Lacey Springs says, non-citizen voting. Let us proceed and send blank ballots to Russia, China, and Mexico. Leftists will be happy to harvest and then drop off. That is jackassery. Do you know where the button is, Big Rig, for jackassery? Mm-hmm. Yes. Illegals voting, harvesting, jackassery. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. There it is. Duff from Huntsville says, I cannot help. Oh, hang on. Whoa. I got a bigger text for that one. He says, I'm okay with people voting that have been vetted legally to vote. I respect the law, the process. However, I have a problem with the process of voting. Ballot harvesting, mail-ins, computers that can be manipulated. Voting should take place on one specific day, in person, by paper, strictly monitored. If need be, place a finger in the permanent ink to guard against double voting. He said, I can accept losing, but make the fight fair. Duff, you were spot on, brother. And that's, by the way, you just described Alabama voting except for the ink on the finger. We do it pretty well here, and we get our results in the same day. Lisa from Tanner. Lisa, it's a long text. I can't read that long of a text, but I appreciate it. She says, when I was growing up, many Christians still believed that politics was dirty business. We should stay out of it. I think that's the reason we now live in a post-Christian culture. We've been so concerned with being nice, we completely lost sight of the need. I agree with you. I think there was a long time there it was deemed that, well, we need to stay out of politics because that's really unseemly for the church to discuss it. Let me tell you something. The church in America better wake up. The church in America had better wake up. And I don't mean you have to go to the pulpit and endorse candidates. That's not what I'm saying. But you can certainly remind your people that voting day is coming and they should vote their faith. If you look at the candidates and you decide, well, that one stands for everything I don't, but that one stands for everything that I do believe, maybe that should guide your thinking in the polls. Jeff from Indiana says, okay, never mind. You know what? I just realized is he on the phone? Mm-hmm. Well, then why am I reading his text? Jeff from Indiana, how you doing, buddy?
I don't know. I was getting ready to talk about the first dipper, man. You think about me, and there I am. Huh?
Just poof, there you are, like a genie in a bottle. Yeah. Just rub. I sit over here and I just rub the microphone, and Jeff appears.
As long as you don't criticize my fish, you'll be all right. John will give you a good score.
You know, I got a bad grade yesterday because I dared to criticize your fish.
No, it was me who started that.
I know.
It was Big Rig who started it, but I joined right in. I couldn't leave him out there flapping, so
we deserved it. We deserved it. Sorry about that, Jeff.
All right, what are you thinking today, Jeff?
Hey, this is on the first dipper here and everything, but you know, they talk about the illegal aliens.
Yeah.
Well, they're not illegal aliens. Let's call them exactly what they are. They're illegal squatters.
True.
We treat them just like squatters. If they get their nose in the door and they come into your house and everything, it's like, oh, well, you know, they're in their house, they're living there. Even though they're trespassing and everything, we can't just arrest them and throw them in jail or throw them out. We got to get a judge's opinion to get these people out of your house. And, you know, even though you're still making the payments on the thing and everything, they're living there for free. And then after they do get eventually booted out, you know, you can't reclaim any of that money.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, you know what's crazy is there are certain venues in the United States that have what they call squatters' rights. I mean, they literally almost favor the squatter over the homeowner. And that's exactly what we see with sanctuary cities. It's like they've given squatters' rights to illegals.
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, they're basically coming in our house and living in our house, you know, uninvited. And so, you know, I think we need to instead of illegal aliens, we need to start calling them illegal squatters, because that's more a descriptive term of what they're actually doing.
Fair enough. Coming in here trying to get your fried fish, that's what they're doing.
It could be.
All right, man, where are you at right now? Are you on the way home?
I just crossed into Tennessee, man. I'm heading north.
All right, be careful. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one, Phil.
Take care, man. A couple more texts for the break. Russell from Rural Route 1. I can't say that. Russell from Rural Route 1 Says he's not been hearing Brian Taylor's commercials, but yeah, that's because all the big trial lawyer money is funding the commercials for his opponent right now. David from Athens says, Phil, I just heard our own Senator Katie Britt. Oh, that's right, breaking news. Thank you, David from Athens, for reminding me. We just had breaking news during the show. Alabama's U.S. Senator Katie Britt is going to deliver the GOP response to Biden's State of the Union address. Now, for those who don't know, that's just a really huge deal. I mean, they often try to find an upcoming rising star within the party. They don't hand it off to like the Mitch McConnells and the John Thunes and the John Barrassos. They find somebody up and coming who's got a little more dynamic personality and is new on the scene. Like Marco Rubio gave it years ago when he was considered the new rising star. Anyway, Katie Britt is going to be delivering the GOP response to Biden's State of the Union, I believe, next week. So that's good doings. Congratulations to her. Good for Alabama. Specialist Edwards from Madison says, just wait till they pass the kids 5 and up are eligible to vote so they can choose their gender. Just saying. Wow. Lead the way, Phil. He says, thank you very much, Specialist. Appreciate you. Yeah, I mean, I saw something today. It was on social media. A lady who's basically a mommy activist. And this mommy activist had her 19-month-old at a gay pride parade telling people that she uses non-binary gender terms. I'm pretty sure 19 months don't even know where their shoes are, much less how to selectively use their non-binary terms because they've made their own decision. It's ridiculous. Teresa from Town Creek. Gina from Pell City. Gina from Pell City is apparently a fan of Justice Sarah Stewart, who's running against Brian Taylor that was here today. Says that she believes that Justice Sarah Stewart was responsible for modernizing the court's computer systems a few years ago. Okay. Hope that means she can also decide cases and run the entire court system. Teresa from Town Creek. That's the one you read out earlier about Brian Taylor and saying she's made a decision now as you heard him talk. Lisa from Huntsville says, I love how liberals scream, quote, we need to do things here like they do in Europe. Obviously didn't pay attention to history class. Anyway, they say there is no country in the world that I know of that allows non-citizens to vote in their elections. It should not be allowed here either. I knew that topic was going to get people fired up. A couple more for the break. Harold from Huntsville says, I got a question. All right, Harold, what's your question? Says, a friend of mine were discussing politics. He concluded that Alabama is being run by 10 counties that have to agree on any major changes within any county that is true. Is that true? Counties in Alabama do not have their own autonomy to make major decisions. Yeah, we don't have much home rule. You're right. A lot of things have to go through Montgomery. But no, I mean, when you say 10 counties, what he may be meaning is population base, meaning that if you can win it's like any election. When I ran for the state Senate, I campaigned everywhere out of respect for everyone. But I also knew that the box in Broomtown and Cherokee County was not going to win me the race. It was going to be one of the bigger boxes like the Meadowbrook box in Gadsden or the big box in Center in Cherokee County. So anyway, what he's probably saying there is that the biggest population centers have the most vote weight. And that's probably true. It doesn't mean that the other ones don't count, though. All right, take me to a break there, Big Rig. We'll do that. We'll come right back. We'll see where we are. Yeah, Biden and Trump delivering their dueling speeches at the border today. I have not seen the sound bites or heard the sound bites, but I imagine they were lively. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just, I mean, like making common sense like a superpower. Hey, by the way, you hear those ads playing during the break, right? So just know this, Rightside Radio is a standalone entity. We are a business unto ourselves. The stations you might be listening to us live on, they do not own us. We send them our show. And like any other business, you have to maintain revenue streams that keep the business going. One of the ways we do that at Rightside is by virtue of selling ads. So when you hear those ads play, that's part of how we are able to bring the show to you every day. Now listen, here's the deal. Think about this. Y'all are a bunch of Rightside ruffians. You may be a Rightside ruffian that has goods and services you want to sell. We have an audience here they say is well over 30,000 plus listeners per week. That's a bunch of Rightside ruffians that might want to buy from another ruffian. So I'm just saying, if you'd like to advertise on Rightside Radio, the way it works is you don't call the station, you contact us directly. And you go to rightsideradio.org. That's rightsideradio.org. Our website has all our stuff on it. And send us a message on the tab that says advertising and contact. Send us a message. Lauren will get back to you immediately. And she's great at what she does. And she's been working with quite a few people. Yeah, we've got new ads being placed like as we speak. But yeah, rightsideradio.org if you want to advertise on Rightside Radio. John from Huntsville, we're going to get his grades in today early because I don't want to miss them. I'm still somewhat chagrined by our grades yesterday. The fact that you and I got a B because we just dared to speak out about fried fish. I mean, this is America, right? This is a show that espouses the First Amendment freedoms that we love and hold dear, and yet I couldn't speak about fried fish. I don't understand.
Well, we can't gossip about our friends, and Jeff's our friend.
What, was it gossip?
I guess. I don't know.
Nah, I was talking about fish.
Okay.
Just fish. You were gossiping. I was just talking about fish. John from Huntsville says, I was going to give Big Rig an A+, but when he hit that Jack Ashery sound effect, I upgraded him to an A++. He said, Phil's fantastic performance also earns him an A++, and today's co-winners are Brian Taylor and Eric Johnston with an A++. Perfection and congratulations. I can live with that.
Yeah.
I can live with that. That's good stuff. Thanks, John. Appreciate you, as always. Got a brand spanking... Okay, yeah, I see. Somebody texted in, didn't give us their name. I think he was talking about that the last caller we had, Eric Johnston. His phone was a little hard to hear, and we did bump him up as best we could. So thank you for that. And that is Joe from Indiana. We got two from Indiana now. What's up?
Nice.
Indiana stepping in. All right, so now we have Jeff from Indiana and Joe from Indiana. If you guys are related, let me know. John from Harvest says Grandpa Joe isn't going to go to the border to fix anything. He's going to go get some Mexican ice cream. Nice. Cousin Crystal from Moulton says, I heard Biden scheduled his visit after it was known that Trump was going. Okay, so I guess that's it. He didn't want to get showed up.
Yep.
Showed up? He didn't want to get showed up. Shown up? What am I looking for here? Anyway, he didn't want to get upstaged. Kenny from Elkmont says the UAW is pushing hard at Toyota Motor Plant in Huntsville, filling workers' heads with propaganda and half-truths. Not if I can help it. I will not join if voted in and will not ever support or participate in a strike. Right side strong. Kenny, I appreciate you, man. Tell your friends. I mean, if we start seeing the unionization of our non-union plants, it's going to drive business out of the state. It absolutely is. We're going to look like Detroit. And I got relatives in Detroit, and I can tell you right now, Detroit's suffering. And a lot of that is because they became so controlled by union-based politics that it just drove them into the ground. Mike from Owens Crossroads, what did you send me, Mike? Yeah, there's the announcement on Katie Britt. Yeah, that's awesome. So Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, pleased to announce that along with Leader McConnell, that they have selected Senator Katie Britt to deliver the Republican response to the State of the Union address. The American people will tune in as the youngest Republican woman ever elected to the Senate turns the page on the oldest president in history. Love it. Love it. Love it. Got to get her on the show pretty soon. That's kind of surreal. I mean, she's actually pretty young, and still got young kids. And anyway, all good. Glad to see it. Alabama in the house. Robert from Athens says, Colonel Phil, have the people of Alabama forgotten Phoenix City? Do we need to rewatch the movie Walking Tall? Vice industries come with gangsters, whether they wear cheap Italian suits or feathered headdresses. Wow. Great text, Robert. By the way, yes, I've done a monologue on Phoenix City more than once. I need to do it again. That's the original. That was where the name Sin City, USA came from, was Phoenix City, Alabama. All right, folks, amazing day. We got an amazing tomorrow already laid on. You guys stay tuned. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 2.